The point is of the Second Amendment is to free us from tyranny, because if you look at any of these countries, whether it was China, whether it was Nazi Germany, like right before it all turned into a mass slaughter was their gun rights were taken away. So if you look at all the history of all the countries that took the guns away, then mass slaughter, genocide came right after that. All right, welcome back to Spartan Leadership. This week, since you know I got these two gentlemen sitting next to me, it is Leadership in Review. And last time we came out swinging, we talked about Roe v. Wade. We've had some incredible feedback to that episode. Obviously, we are not here to solve the world's problems, although we'd like to at times. But we are here to show how to have a contentious conversation coming from three different viewpoints, politically, ideology, however you want to look at it. But we are just three normal guys trying to show the world that we can have these contentious conversations over a fine cigar, a little bourbon, and obviously some friendship. So today we're going to dive into the Second Amendment. It is another hot button topic that has been tossed around in the media due to a couple rulings. Obviously there's been some shootings, stuff of that nature, and it is one of these things that has people really riled up on different or opposing viewpoints. So when we're in the cigar lounges or when we're in conversation with people, we want to make sure that we can have these conversations on a deep level, but also on a respectful level. So we're going to come at that today. Obviously, Emmanuel here, Joe here, and we're going to have some fun today. So they never know what they're smoking, so I'm going to I give the cigars out here, so I'm going to say what we're smoking today. I gave Emmanuel the Wonderlust. I gave Joe the Tatooine Pumpkin, the little guy. He's still getting into the smoking game, so
he need a little flavor.
He got a little flavor, and I got the Opus X Das Shark tonight. So we're sipping on some McKenna. Except for Emmanuel, he's drinking the H2O.
H2O.
Keeping us right here. But so I think tonight, starting with the Second Amendment, obviously we know we have some different viewpoints. Emmanuel, let's start with you. I know you talked a little bit about growing up in a dangerous neighborhood.
Yeah.
You having your own issues with the law. Let's start with you today and go into your perspective on the right to bear arms, the gun violence in our countries. Just kind of let's start us off going down that path.
Well, I'm probably piggyback off of you guys because I'm here to learn tonight, because I really don't have any gun rights. You know, as a youngster, 19, got caught with a gun, and that was the end of my gun rights. But the thing about it is I'm looking at all the crime and the gun violence right now, and a lot of the DAs right now who think they're helping the problem out, especially in the inner city where I come from. They're making the problem worse to me, because it's like a trickle down thing from the feds to the local cops. There's nothing in it for them with gun violence. With gun violence, most of the guys that are out here committing the gun crimes, they're not going to get a good lawyer. There's nothing to repossess from them. There's nothing to seize from them. It's just, you're just going to have another statistic. And by being lenient on these guys, you're making the problem worse. There's no way a guy should be out on his third gun offense while on probation or while on an ankle monitor committing another violent crime. You know, crime is crime, but violent crime is a total difference. My crime wasn't even a violent crime, but the major difference of the punishment I received. I was charged federally. And it was, I don't care if you go get Mark Eisenberg, I don't care what lawyer you go get, that's mandatory 5 years if you get caught with another gun. I haven't had a BB gun since then. Most of my buddies who got caught on the state side, 10 days in Huber, probation, misdemeanors. Most of them ended up catching another gun case.
What year was that you got
This
caught?
was in 92.
Okay.
Yeah, 92.
That's interesting timing, because the crime bill was what, 1991? Biden's crime bill?
I think it was 94.
94? Okay.
But gun laws, federal gun laws are totally different than state gun laws. They're way harsher. And a lot of these DAs are being lenient on these guys. You just create monsters. These guys, like, once I got my gun case, I knew it was serious. I don't want to go sit down 5 years. I don't even want a BB gun. But, I mean, hindsight, I look at it, it might have been a good thing, because most of my buddies, they care less. It was not a mandatory thing weighing over their heads. I just think if they got a lot tougher with these crimes, if you notice, a lot of the gun violence in the inner city, there's no type of fear of the law. But at the same time, they're not running into banks because they know that's a mandatory 10 to 15 years. People know what they can get away with. So I think these DAs who are being super lenient on these violent criminals, it's a total difference from some little guy selling marijuana. That's not a victim in that, because the other person has a choice to go buy marijuana if they want to or not. But crimes where victims are there, I just don't believe in that. I don't believe being lenient on violent criminals, knocking old ladies out, putting guns in, the hands of these 3-time felons and stuff like that. I think they need to get tougher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Joe comes with a different perspective. For y'all that don't know, Joe is a former military, Air Force National Guard, correct? Yep. So give us your take on kind of current state of our nation, a little bit of spin off of what Emmanuel said, and go from there.
I mean, I think I would agree with parts of it, right? Maybe not as focused on the inner city. I think my perspective is more on gun control versus punishment, right? I think that there are victims because of their environment who may be obligated to carry a firearm due to how dangerous those neighborhoods may be. Those neighborhoods, there's a culture inside of them that then somebody may be obligated to carry a gun for their own safety, right? Whether you have to carry that gun illegally or legally, that's unfortunate, right? I think the thing that, I kind of hit on in our last podcast has to do with resources inside of those communities to ensure that the citizens inside of those communities are safe. If we talk about gun policy on another level, we're talking about how people are acquiring weapons, waiting periods, magazine capacities, things that really are going to make an impact, in my opinion, on keeping the overall citizenship safe from people and people having weapons in their possession.
So go into that a little bit. What is your thought with that? Keeping the citizens safe.
I mean, I believe truly that there should be mandatory waiting times to purchase a weapon. Anybody who has any sort of domestic violence background should not be allowed to possess a weapon.
Well, but what about any other violence?
Any other violence is a bit ambiguous. I think that's a little over. Like, what kind of violence? Like,
well, I'm just sorry. Let's say they were charged, similar to what you kind of said, Emmanuel, a violent crime. Like they were charged with a violent crime, and it's their, say, in his example, third offense of a violent crime.
I mean,
that's a good point.
I guess I'd have to get a little bit more into like how you identify a violent crime.
Say if you strong arm robbed an old lady, took her purse and knocked her out and broke her jaw.
I don't think that person should have a weapon, because how would that situation escalated had that person had a weapon?
And you made a beautiful point when you say, like me, my case, I could see, like, I was young. I could see if I kicked in a door or used it in a violent way, it was just possession of a firearm. I just didn't have the papers right, and I paid the price for it. I'm a man about it. I had to man up. So when my buddies be talking about, you want to go hunting, I'm like, I can go bow hunting. That's about it. Yeah. But I've had to pay the price for years and years now. I would love to be able to do it the correct way, but you made a beautiful point. And where I came from, I'm not a violent guy. It was just, hey, I'm protecting myself. I live in a jungle, so I don't want anybody kicking in my door type of situation. So I think it's a double-edged sword, but you make a beautiful point there. It depends on how you use the gun. If it's I think there's no tolerance for violent, strong-arm robbers, breaking and entering, holding a gun to someone's head in a violent way. I just don't think there's no tolerance for that. But it seems to be those guys get the most breaks in the court system right now. I mean, if you look at the news of just growing up, I just look at all of my buddies who were like nonviolent, who made money, the cops. Just think about this. If someone wins the lottery and you got that lottery ticket and they call that other person's number, look at the envy and jealousy, not in a malice way, but you say, oh man, no one likes someone who's over succeeding and they're not succeeding. So when the cops see a non-violent criminal riding around in a Lamborghini, he's got a hard on for that guy. But that little bum on the street that's robbing people, there's nothing that he's jealous of him about. But if he see that guy with the big mansion and they're like, he's living better than me, I want to do a sting on that guy. We got to get that guy. But that guy that's just shooting the other guy down the block, they could care less about that. And it trickles down because that lawyer, he don't want that guy that's robbing people, because he's robbing people for a reason. He's broke. The lawyer wants the cops to get that guy that's got that $2 million stashed in the backyard. He's gonna give me $200,000 of that. So it just trickles all the way down. And I mean, that's just the world we live in right now. But you make a beautiful point about, I do have sympathy for a guy who was just trying to protect his family and he just didn't have his paperwork in.
That you made a point too about that guy who's maybe shooting up his own community.
Yeah.
If he's not shooting up his own community, he's shooting up somebody else, they have a different problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they are coming after that.
Yeah.
As soon as he steps into my neighborhood, when it's isolated, but
they're gonna throw the book at him. But as long as he's keeping it within his neighborhood, they could care less, man. That's why Chicago and all of these inner cities are just out of control, because it's not affecting. You know, a lot of people, we have gotten caught up into, if it doesn't bother me, we've lost humanity. It's not my problem.
Right.
If I throw a little money, if I put a BLM sign in my window, it's not my problem. But as soon as they come to their schools or get into your neighborhood, it's a different story.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to talk about
real.
immigration, but they just proved the point by sending some of the immigrants to Martha's Vineyard and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I like the point you made, though. And I'm here to listen and learn today because I really don't know about guns. I really don't. I know I got to stay away from them. That's all I know.
do you think, I mean, do you mind if I indulge, like, or
Yeah, go
kind of
ahead.
dive a little bit deeper into your situation?
Go ahead.
Was your main reason for not, you know, putting yourself into a situation where you would be around guns? Because there's other stipulations as a felon that you're not allowed to do, right? Like you can't marry another felon. You can't. There's other things.
While you're on probation.
Is it while you're on probation?
Yeah, while you're on probation. Once you're done with probation.
Was it those 5 years, that potential 5 years?
Yeah.
Right? Is that entirely what kept you away?
The main thing. I mean, when I was young, the neighborhood I grew up in, you know, the beauty of me, I've just never been a violent person. If I did have a gun, it was just strictly for protection.
Yeah.
And but the neighborhood I grew up in, if I would have got a slap on the wrist, I would have had another gun. If they would have told me you're only going to do, if I was only facing 10 days or some probation, I would have had a gun the same week I got out. But it really smacked me in the face and say, wow, if I get caught with a gun, that's 5 years. No matter what lawyer you get, there's no ifs, buts, or maybes. That deterred me. That was, I mean, in the hood, that's all people talk about. Please don't go fed. Because as a criminal, you know, I don't want to go there. They're way tougher. So, of course, these criminals are not dumb. A lot of criminals are masterminds. And they're saying, oh, these new, I don't want to say liberal, but this new age DAs, they're like, oh, I'm not worried about this. Just look at kids now. They are not scared of having guns. That's why gun violence, it shows you how smart they are. If you had a yard full of violent pit bulls, these criminals are not going to walk in there, and they know better. I bet they won't jump in a cage with a gorilla or a rhino at the zoo. They know better. You know better when you know there's consequences on the other side. Could you imagine if they said you only do 30 days in jail if you get caught robbing a bank? I'd be at Wells Fargo tomorrow.
So do you, I mean, that's like that meme where it's like, for stealing $10,000 in Canada, the fine is only $5,000. Something like that. It was like, I'm gonna go keep stealing $10,000 and it's only $5,000 fine. That's
gonna come up. Yeah.
Versus Singapore, if you drop a piece of trash and you're caught, they chop off your hand.
Yeah.
Right, and that's why Singapore is so damn clean, right?
Yeah.
You can't even bring gun into gum. You're allowed one pack as a tourist to bring one pack of gum to Singapore.
Philippines got some crazy laws too. Now some of these laws are just outrageous, man. You know, and then you get some people who are just crazy to go over to Singapore and try to or the Philippines, knowing it's like a death sentence. You get caught trying to smuggle drugs, and they do it anyway. A lot of people from Australia are caught up on life sentences. And that's just like, that's ludicrous. You know, greed gets you nowhere just because the price is so cheap. But my question is, since I don't know a lot about guns, like I said, I've stayed away from guns since I was a teenager, since I went through my episode. I want to know, body armor protects you, right?
Yes.
And that's not a violent thing, wearing a bulletproof vest.
No.
But I wonder why that's illegal, to have a bulletproof vest as a felon or whatever.
I think that stems from the gun as well, and then like police cannot then take you down as a a shooter. Right?
Yeah, but it should be a crime.
That was one of the things that Uvalde is they thought that he had a bulletproof vest on, which he didn't.
I get it.
That they thought he was going to the building with that as well as a weapon.
Well, there's a lot of stupid shit that happened in Uvalde.
Sword,
yeah. That could be a whole nother podcast. It's tragic.
A bulletproof vest at the same time, it could save you. It could save you. It's something that could save you.
So it's a fair question. So let's talk about that. Like, why on earth would they ban something, whether you're a felon or anybody that can protect you or protect your family?
I think they made the law wrong. I think they should say, if you get caught with a bulletproof vest while committing a violent crime or any type of offensive crime where you're trying to rob someone or you're trying to go into a bank and you're wearing a bulletproof vest, enhance the sentence by 5 to 10 years. But if you're just minding your own business, driving in a war zone, you just imagine, I don't get it.
For instance, in your case.
I'm just curious because I mean, granted, the internet is a crazy place. Weren't there companies trying to sell bulletproof backpacks to children?
Yeah.
So why is that different than a bulletproof vest?
I don't know. That's a good question. But I remember
and granted, the internet is a wild place, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
but you're right. They were
trying to get in Baltimore, in the neighborhoods in Baltimore and stuff like that. They were actually giving out bulletproof backpacks. I think some people started complaining about that, but you're right.
If I ever get to a place where I have to buy a bulletproof backpack for my child, like,
I don't want to be there.
Yeah, like that's tragic.
Well, we don't know if we're in that place or not right now.
Yeah, we could easily be.
I mean, think about Uvalde, like it's as we brought that example up, like that's a small town.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's in Texas. Unfortunately for me, because being libertarian, I got a little conspiracy in me.
But at least you admit it.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, because there's huge questions, right? Is like when you're trying to pass legislation, there always seems to be a hot button issue that pops up right around that time. And so they were trying to pass something. I don't remember what they were trying to pass at that time.
Abbott was trying. Well, he wasn't trying. He passed. Anybody in the state of Texas can conceal and carry without a license.
Yeah, but it was something on the correct. That's true. But no, there was something on the federal level where they were meeting regarding that, regarding something. And
so it was the same one that we talked about, where the Supreme Court denied the New York State the right to not let people conceal carry.
That might have been right. That might have been it. But anyhow, then all of a sudden the Uvalde situation happens, right? That same week or that same day, almost. Now,
I don't think there's. It's a very dangerous, slippery slope to try to make.
You're dang right it is.
I mean, there's also somebody, like, while we're speaking on a podcast, that just got sued and is in federal court for making conspiracy claims about another school shooting.
You talking about what's his name?
Alex Jones.
Oh yeah. Dude's kind of crazy, right? I think we can all admit that.
But what about freedom of speech? I mean, you can make any.
Hold on.
People lie all the time.
So we're not trying. I'm posing questions. Is what I'm like really about. I'm not saying this is what happened. Now, in that same situation, though, the cops took over an hour to even get their asses in there. Mm-hmm. Right, so there's
they were in there immediately. They stood outside the door.
Right, they weren't in the school trying to stop the shooter from murdering innocent kids more than he already had. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. That's wherever there was a huge problem that happened in that whole side of things. But it just seems to be that there's always something that pops up in the news narrative or some situation that happens anytime they're trying to shove a bill or a narrative down our throats, and that's what makes me question things. It's just like this this timing that's like seems to be like way too perfect for any of these bills and whatnot. It's just that's what drives my question.
If that's your own person, yeah, I mean, I get it. I just it's a slippery slope in believing that there's that overarching of. I mean, you got to think of all the people that play, right? I mean, those cops work in that community. Those cops still took an oath. For them to purposefully allow that to happen. I don't think that's. I don't think there's a correlation between a political agenda and the tragedy that happened. I just can't see that
I can see where your point is, and I get it. It's hard to believe that there's evil people in our government. It's hard to believe there's evil people in our FBI. It's hard to believe
Why is it hard to believe?
Well, because we're natured people, right? And we're taught that we're supposed to trust these people. But that's why it's hard to believe, I think, for most people.
But you have to look at the writing on the wall. I mean, when we say bills, most bills are bribes. There's got to be something in it. Instead of passing a bill that's good for Americans and good for humankind, most of these bills have kickbacks, and it's so much this lobbyist want this bill. All bills.
No, I feel like we 100% agree on that.
It's just
we 100% agree. My point is, like, I feel like most people, and I think, Joe, you might be in this case still, is like, I don't trust our government. I just don't. And I think that's the fundamental thing when we get down to Second Amendment rights. Because I just wrote an article for ATF Lifestyle Magazine on this. And my overarching point, because I did so it was hard to fit my allotted words on this article because I went into the history of the Second Amendment. I went to the history of a little bit on slavery and militia. I went into current day politics, and then I'm also trying to write this on leadership. And it was hard to keep my words in total, but I think what it comes down to is when you try to tell a libertarian or a Republican that we're going to pass laws to limit your gun rights, why there's such a backlash to that is a fundamental distrust of government. It's not like, oh, I just love these guns so much that I want to shoot at all time, which I do. I do enjoy shooting my guns. But at the same point, it's for hunting, it's for sport, it's whatever. But at the end of the day, I have a fundamental distrust of government, our government. And that's why I think most people get so up in arms about the fact that there's going to be certain laws that take rights away from innocent people, that we're not felons at any given time, that we're not, that did nothing wrong, that are trying to protect their families.
I guess I can try to see your viewpoint on that one, but if we take a step back, right, before we kind of venture into that, then what's your view on gun control? How easy it is to
I think I should be able to own a tank.
Really?
Yeah.
So then do you think that you should be able to own a nuclear weapon since our government has an arsenal of those as well?
I don't see a need for that right now, but I see a need for a tank.
Really?
I think it's legal.
No, here's a.
I'm just trying to wrap my head because
I'm semi-joking.
There is that argument where people talk about since the Second Amendment was 1791.
1791 is when it was ratified.
That's right. John Adams put it in.
It was actually
a
James
muzzle-loaded
Madison.
rifle at the time, and maybe you should only be able to own that, right?
Well, they were very purposeful in their wording. They knew technology would change. Mm-hmm. So they didn't say, hey, you can own a muzzle-loaded rifle. They were very purposeful in leaving their wording open-ended.
But didn't that also have to do with the 13 original colonies and militias being formed at the time? Are you part of a militia then? Are you an established militia in which you are part of?
So correct. So the history on that is actually, since you were National Guard, the history on that is there was partly militia, and now slavery was a component in there. Like the Second Amendment, the 13 colonies, they fought over that because some of those guys were slave owners.
Because the National Guard is still a state militia. It's still controlled by the governor.
Kind of. So let me give you a little. So like Texas and California, yes, now they have said that, like, California did it under when Trump was president. Texas is now saying under Biden, like, you don't have control of our state National Guard. Mm-hmm. Okay, but most states will respond to the federal government, right? So ipso facto,
there's still a cohesivity between the federal.
Correct. So ipso facto, the federal government controls our state militias. But history on that, real briefly, is that the state militias went away because, they turned into the National Guard essentially, because some of those militias were used against the slaves. So at that time, back in 1791 to when the Civil War in 1896.
It was
1860, whatever it was, in the 1800s. So it was about 100 years.
That was a big contention of also abolitionists was then if you freed slaves, they were then given rights to then own guns.
Correct. But at that time, then militia were going in and raiding guns from Southern slaves. And so that's when the government took it into creating the National Guard for the states. instead of having these state-run militias, so that it would be able to, for the abolitionists, give that rights to the slaves to own arms, right? So that's the brief history on it. But then since then, now our states have been, and the National Guard has been used for the federal government to fight wars and not necessarily serve the purposes that a state-run militia would be run, because a state-run militia is to protect us, the citizens, from our federal government from turning into tyranny. Right?
Yep.
And that's what we lost. So that's kind of what I proposed in the right. That's what I kind of got to in the article, was like, hey, maybe it's time for the state-run militias to fully come back. Not be that, like, if the National Guard's it, fine, but it's going to be the state guard. And then our states be able to control, and like then maybe we can sign up for a militia. Maybe I can sign up for the state-run militia or whatever it might be. Maybe it's time to relook at that. But that's kind of the brief history on it and why. But the point is of the Second Amendment is to free us from tyranny, because if you look at any of these countries, whether it was China, whether it was Nazi Germany, like right before it all turned into a mass slaughter, was their gun rights were taken away. So if you look at all the history of all the countries that took the guns away, then mass slaughter, genocide came right after that.
UK didn't happen. UK doesn't allow guns.
Australia really don't have guns either.
But they just got rid of it after that mass shooting that happened. What was that, 2 years ago? That right as soon as it happened, and then New Zealand as well, right?
Yeah, I think
New Zealand.
I think a lot of gun laws were created to sort of kind of keep a lot of guns out of back in the day, to keep like free slaves from having the equal rights toward gun laws. They had like a lot of loopholes, and a lot of the crimes, like a lot of young black men were getting caught with, they were hitting them with felonies instead of dropping some of the charges down on nonviolent crimes, so they can strictly take away their gun rights. And you know, if you really wanted an equal playing field, like drunk driving and stuff like that, they didn't want to hit people with felonies, because it'd be a lot of other people losing their gun rights, and even cops and stuff like that, and they're not having that. So a lot of the gun laws were created to kind of keep guns out of a lot of African American hands. But at the same time, what they're doing now, because people are going to get illegal guns, and it's not about what you do with these guns, it's about getting that felony on your record where you can't possess a gun. But the leniency, like I keep going back to, is just creating a bigger problem in the black community. But you know, it's just all of these lobbyists. It's just so much to every law that they make. There's a kickback. There's something in it for these politicians. They're not making laws that are good for the general public, and it's just messed up.
So do you think? So like going back, like, I mean, I know the whole tank thing was probably a little bit sarcastic.
Somewhat.
Right.
Yeah,
But
I just want to run over cars that are going slow in the left lane in front of me, honestly. I don't really, I mean, although it would be cool to shoot at an inanimate object that's not going to harm anyone, really it was just a joke.
But what about limiting access, ensuring that there are checkpoints in place for when you are obtaining, whether it be a 9mm or an AR-15, even if you're, you know, trying to get a 22.
Why would you limit it?
Not limit it, but ensure there's checks and balances in place to ensure that those people that are getting guns in their possession are getting them, and they're responsible people.
Well, every time I've bought a gun, I've had to go through the FBI.
Yeah, you get a background check.
Yeah.
Correct. But do you think that there should be additional tests and checks and balances? Because when I got my background check back when I bought my firearm, it was maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I walked into the store.
Well, it depends on how long it
did my
takes.
background check, got my gun, and walked out within, I think the whole process may have been 15 minutes. The only thing that I had a longer time doing was deciding between a Glock and a SIG.
Yeah.
That was the longest process.
Well, it depends on how long it takes the FBI to get back to the gun owner or the gun shop. But yeah,
I think you can do all the, like me personally.
Like, do you think like wait times, like all the things that can be put in place to ensure that a person with a history of domestic violence doesn't go and obtain a firearm and kill their spouse, or somebody who is angry at a coworker or a company can't go and pick up a weapon to then walk into that building while they're still in a fit of rage and create a mass shooting. Well, then there's the
flip side of that, right? So I don't disagree with any of your points there, because I can see those examples, and we've probably seen those examples play out in the media. But then there's a flip side of that. Let's say I am threatened by someone, and they threaten me and my family verbally over the phone, by text or whatever, and let's say I'm not a current gun owner, and I can't go to the gun shop and protect my family. Let's just argue. Let's go to the opposite side of that, right? But now I got to wait 48 hours, and that person that threatened me comes to my house that night.
I don't think you can.
But then going back to that does your distrust in the government also create a distrust in local, like, police officials?
Well, let's say I give that threat to the police, they don't take it seriously.
And then you're taking it into your own hands to protect your family, which I completely think is fine. Like, you should be able to protect your family, but in that instance, are there not other avenues for you to go about rather than grabbing a rifle and?
Like, so that's all I'm saying is there's two sides to that, right? There's a protection side, and then there's also the side that you're right. You're arguing for mental illness or someone that has a domestic.
But they got laws for it. I mean, I don't think you can mute away craziness, because if a guy wants to kill someone, he can go find a gun right away, and you can run down anywhere and find a gun nowadays. I don't think there's a law. Listen, if a guy had 50 guns, I wouldn't care if he had 500 guns. If he had them responsible, if he took his guns responsibly and wasn't going out here trying to hurt anyone, I don't care how many guns you have. There's no limit to how many guns you should be able to have if you're responsible. But I know people who should not have guns. They can get guns anyway. Most people in the hood don't have permits to get guns. It's guns. They got it's from Brazil to here. If you want a gun, I could probably go get a gun tomorrow if I wanted to. But I'm not insane, and I know better than having a gun. But there's some people, if you're going to go murder a bunch of people, you're not caring about tomorrow anyway. So I don't care what law you come up with. You cannot come up with a law for craziness. Now, his background checks, I do agree with that. And that's where the law comes in hand. A lot of these guys who have 5 domestic violent things on there and still get a gun because these DAs are, we'll bring it down to a misdemeanor. Give him a felony where he can't get a gun either, because in the hood, as soon as you jaywalk, they want to give you a felony, but I still
that's going to disproportionately impact black people. Though.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I still don't think there's nothing.
Just as the Second Amendment was written.
Yeah, it was intended for that, but I still don't think there's a law to. Well,
they actually limited some words out of that. Actually, you read the history on that too. So James Madison was the chief author of it, and he was a slave owner, and there was actually a longer sentence that was stripped down in the ratification of that amendment.
Yeah, but I mean, even when the Constitution was written, I wasn't considered a man.
Right. But what I'm saying is, so you're right. There was, but it was actually even worse against black slaves at that time.
I would argue it's probably the same way still. If you take it side by side and you were to compare punishments and sentencing of African Americans versus Caucasian Americans, it's going to be disproportionately probably more severe towards African Americans.
Well, those are current laws you're talking about, right? We are 14% of the population, and we make up 59% of overall gun deaths in America.
That goes to the drug. It goes back to the drug laws. When you can get caught with the same amount of drugs, but they'll say one drug is mainly an inner city drug, crack cocaine, compared to powder cocaine. At the end of the day, 1 gram of cocaine is the same amount as another gram. But when you can make it 100 to 1 from Joe Biden, who made that law, but at the same time, when you look at how guns and the punishment now in the drug game, a guy gets caught with all of the drugs, he's facing the most time. But in the gun world, the guy that's dropping off crates of guns is looking at less time than the guy with a single pistol. Guys should be scared to be coming into these inner cities with crates of designer guns. There's no fear. These gun runners, they're running across America just dropping off tons of guns. You're not looking at these guys getting life. I guarantee you that guy would not be thinking about riding down the freeway with 500 guns for sale if he was facing life in jail if he get caught with those guns. You got to get tougher on the sentences of these people who are selling guns. They're not trying to have stings to get the guns off of the streets and catch these crates of designer guns from Brazil. If you look at some of these guns, and Israel, a lot of these guns come from Israel. Israel should have to pay a price for shipping these illegal guns into some of these neighborhoods, but there's no type of punishment for these guys that are pushing all of these guns.
100% agree. I want to get back to your point though on the laws you're bringing up and how it's disproportionately against black Americans, right? So but who's writing those laws now? And who's written those laws over the last 30 years?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not
all the
arguing
politicians.
that's not a
But why are we still
a problem
supporting
of
that?
policy.
Why are we still supporting, we voted Joe Biden, and he wrote probably the most racist bill in recent history.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Kamala Harris also has her issues with the mandatory minimums that
Correct.
she put face in
why?
California as well.
Here's kind of my point. Like, again, as a libertarian, I'm sitting here going, like, we argue for this two-party system like there's nothing better, holistically as America. I'm not, certainly, but then we're like, oh, well, Trump's an asshole and he has mean tweets, so we're going to vote for someone who wrote literally the most racist bill in the last 50 years into office, who's also senile, into office because we like him better than Trump.
Easy.
Like, I'm just trying to understand.
It's easy, Josh. When the blind leads the blind. Imagine your parents teaching you what's wrong. And I would say 80 to 90% of voters are uneducated. I used to be the same way. I used to just, I like Barack Obama, I'm a Democrat. I think people mess up right out the gate by joining either party. The Crips and the Bloods are two bad gangs. But as voters, we say, I'm conservative, I'm a liberal, I'm a Republican,
Identity
I'm
politics,
a Democrat.
yeah.
It's saying I'm joining a fucked up gang because mostly 99% of these politicians are horrible. I can't even find a good politician. I could probably say 3. I really wish, I'm here to be fair and balanced. I wish somebody can say, this is a good Democrat. I used to like Bernie, but then you see the games that he play, how he flip-flop. He's another politician. I wish I could say, this is a great Republican other than Rand Paul. And I like a couple Republicans, but I'm trying to find out, is there really a good Democrat? I'm not biased. I'm saying, they all play the same game. And when you're not an educated voter, when you can go pay the guy down in South Carolina, Clarksville, whatever his name is, you pay him off and he'll say, oh, Hillary's better than Bernie, and Hillary or Joe Biden sat in at this civil rights, and Bernie actually sat in at these civil rights things, and you're telling me Hillary Clinton, who was a Goldwater girl, is better than him? So when he's got this big group of black voters, and it goes vice versa, it's a big old circle. Republicans want to cry now. They started cancel culture. They started, you're not patriotic if you don't vote for this messed up Iraq war. They started with this telling Barack Obama he wasn't
political
American.
correctness started cancel culture, honestly.
But
that's where it started.
But back when you disagreed with that war,
I think
they
might have
said you
coined
were
the term, but I think you're spot on with
they were saying you were unpatriotic. Even Tucker Carlson, who I think is dope. I think Tucker Carlson is amazing. But I think he's the best in the business because he calls out everybody. He tells Lindsey Graham, I wish you would come on my show, because he knows Lindsey Graham is a swamp creature. And Tucker Carlson was so wrong with the Iraq war, telling people you're unpatriotic if you go against the war. And he realized how bad he was. But I think he's the best. Just like you just said, oh, come on, Tucker Carlson. Tell me who's better, who calls out. Name anyone on the other side that will call out any Democrat. He calls out all of the Republicans. He say how horrible the Republicans are. He'll tell you how horrible the Democrats are. They're all horrible. They're all horrible. And, when the blind's leading the blind, people vote. Just like you pay off all of the Black Caucus, and Joe Biden was the worst thing that ever happened to the black community. And they can make a zero a hero overnight. All you have to do is say, I don't like Donald Trump. Now Liz Cheney is up for president. That's all you have to do is say, I don't like Donald Trump. I love Donald Trump because of his policies. I don't care how you talk to me. When someone wrote the 94 crime bill, locked up all the black people that I grew up with, and this is how brainwashed people are. Donald Trump come past the First Step Act, get rid of mandatory minimums. Half of my black friends that came home is because of Donald Trump, and they make songs called F Donald Trump. You got a serious problem right there. That is a serious problem. I don't care if you're wearing a Ku Klux Klan hat. If you save my daughter out of a ocean and you reach your hand in there and pull her out, I don't care what politics you are, you saved her. And that's all I'm saying about Donald Trump. When you make a law to get rid of that mandatory minimum, and a lot of people don't understand. I understand. I was part of that world. A mandatory minimum, you could be an all-American football player. You could be going off to Clemson and you hanging in a car with a bunch of your buddies and they find some drugs and they say, well, you had this and you had that. The judge has no discrepancy. I got to give you that 5 to 10 years now. It's a mandatory minimum. Donald Trump said, no, this kid may be going to Harvard or Yale. Give him a break. Put him on probation. You don't have to go by those guidelines. That was huge. A lot of people came home because of that. But we all, as humans, a lot of people are just voting, Republicans and Democrats. Look at all the Republicans that vote for, look at Lindsey Graham. program right now, knowing that he don't want change. He don't want Donald Trump back in there. What is he's trying to sabotage the Republican Party right now? The worst thing a Republican can do right now, and we're not going to get too far off subject, is to bring up this abortion bill.
Yep,
and he fired up the left, and he did it on purpose. And they all
100.
do it on purpose. It's so many Republicans who hate Donald Trump, and it's for a reason.
Well, I 100% agree with you on that. I want to get Joe's take because I think that there's a bigger establishment that they all play for. Not all, but like you said, there's a very minority that isn't playing the game, and they get lambasted. So give us your take as he was talking there.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to there being an overarching political agenda, I mean, I do think, I mean, for sure, there's Democrats and Republicans where you see them arguing on the floor, and then all of a sudden they're
having steaks, having steaks and drinks afterward.
To bring the topic back to gun control or the Second Amendment, I mean, do you think that there should be any limitations in manufacturing or how many guns are put into the streets or into society, not in the streets, like that are at your local arms dealer or?
No, I haven't, I don't have.
How do we bring more guns off the streets out of bad hands?
Well, here's the thing. Well, like Emmanuel brought it up.
If you get your gun legal, I could care less how many.
Yeah, I'm saying, but how do you get more guns out of bad hands?
That's my point. So like Boys and Girls Club did a gun buyback program locally, right? Okay, so at first I'm like, that's dumb. You're only going to get like people that, some bleeding heart liberals to turn in a couple guns. Okay, that was my first initial take. They got in a couple hundred guns. My second take, after I thought about it a little bit more, was like, okay, if someone wants to turn in their gun, fine. And if one criminal turns in their gun that is going to prevent them from doing harm, then that whole thing was worth it.
But it wasn't even just turning in.
No, I'm just giving you my personal take.
Say somebody else in that household turned to that gun before 5 years later a criminal was to have it.
Correct.
There's a cascading effect of getting that gun off the street.
So correct. But my point is like to what Emmanuel said about the illegal guns. If they're I don't think there should be a mandate on manufacturers that are selling legally to legal purchasers. That makes zero sense.
What about private sales that are allowed in certain states?
Well, I think that they should pass the same FBI test or whatever mandate is beyond that taste. And like a lot of times the media and everyone likes to talk about gun show loopholes. There aren't gun show loopholes.
I've never been to a gun show.
Well, just to let you know, that's like a media talking point. They have to, if you go to a gun show, if Dane County held one, which I doubt they would, but if they did and had it at Alliant Energy Center, we would go there and we would buy a gun and they would pass us through the same FBI check that we would do at Cabela's. So every time they bring that up, I laugh because like the uneducated public that doesn't know that is going to go, yeah, you shouldn't do that. Like it doesn't exist. So stop saying and using it as political fodder. But to get illegal guns off the street, like that's a different topic, right? So like in Chicago, in DC, in New Orleans, these places which are all, by the way, liberal cities that have like the strictest gun laws, have the worst violent crime.
Facts.
Right?
Facts.
So like, and by the way, murder is already illegal. So like, I don't understand when people are arguing for legal purchasers to have limited magazine capacity, limited gun ownership, like you can only have 2, like that doesn't make sense.
But don't those legal weapons trickle down into illegal environments?
It's because they're not punishing the people that are really out here. I feel like if you have a gun at home and it gets stolen, it's your you can't be talking about, oh, I just found out it was stolen a year ago. No, I don't think you should be able to get away. I don't think you should be able to have your gun laying around and your kid can take it to school. With that type of power, you need responsibility behind it. I guarantee you, if these parents knew, I won't have all these guns around my child if I know I can go do life if he goes and blows a school up, and shoot everybody at the school. And I believe in that with pit bulls. And I don't want pit bull lovers to start getting mad at me.
You might have me coming after you over there.
No, that's a major responsibility. It breaks my heart when I see a little kid being mauled and no one can do. Having that type of power in your hands, it's not like having a poodle. You have to be really responsible with guns and vicious dogs. I'm not going to say vicious dog, but powerful dogs like that. And by a lot of people who can just get away. Oh, I bought 4 guns at a gun show. I gave them to these couple people down in the hood, and my hands are clean. You know, if they go commit a crime, you should be charged with every crime they get committed with. You should sell those guns legally and get it out your name. I can't buy a gun and tell some 14-year-olds I'm in a car and say, oh, you guys can go out and joyride, and they go kill somebody, and that's on them. No, I should be just as responsible as them. And as gun owners, it should be, you know, they need to pump up the responsibility for people who are illegally putting these guns in a lot of these people's hands. These guns are coming from somewhere.
And they shouldn't be putting guns legally in irresponsible people's hands.
Correct.
That's true.
Which goes to more checks and balances to ensure.
But by who? But by who?
Yeah, who?
I didn't know this whole government distrust thing was gonna. I didn't know.
Yeah.
But what he's trying to say
is a personal thing that you have. Right?
But I feel like so. My interesting thing, to talk to you guys about, is of all people, shouldn't the Black Americans distrust the government the most? Maybe more than Native. Maybe Native Americans.
Everybody should distrust the government. Look what the government does on a daily. No one tells the truth in the government. The government is there to blind people. Just through COVID alone, no one's going to get up and tell you the truth. It's all about money and power. No one's going. No. Why would anybody trust the government? Our government will get on TV and lie. Oh, they got weapons of mass destruction. I knew they didn't have weapons of mass destruction.
You're talking about the Iraq war, there,
people
but yes.
won't even tell you. Our government is wicked. People won't even tell you what's going on in Ukraine today. You'll get 1 million, and now it's trickling down to the media. I mean, it starts back. Look at J. Edgar Hoover. We name a building after. Just the government is a powerful machine that can control. Black people won't go out and march while Joe Biden's in office. All of a sudden, black cops killing black unarmed men, it just totally stopped. I can go pull up records of that happening every day, but our government's not saying, go march out. Donald Trump's out of there. They don't want you marching right now. And I mean, Edgar Hoover was, all of a sudden people are cheering on the FBI, the same group of people that tapped Martin Luther King, Malcolm X's phone, and all of a sudden they're heroes because they're going after Donald Trump illegally. I mean, look at our government. What type of government do we have where a political opponent can go say, go tap his phone? What evidence do you have? He's getting peed on by Russian hookers. Okay, we'll go tap. You can't tap someone's phone with no evidence. They're doing that every day now.
So to answer your question, to come back to a state-run militia run by the people for the people, I would get down with. Mm-hmm. And that could be some checks and balances. I would get down with that. If it had zero government, cannot be bought and paid for people, I could get down with that. Because I think on the flip side, something I said in this article as well, I talk about is every one of us gun owners knows a friend that they wouldn't trust being on the gun range with.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Dick Cheney.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
I got plenty of friends.
So if we know that, and we don't want that friend, if we're not going to shoot at the gun range with this dude, we probably don't want him to own a gun, do we?
No.
Right? But at the same point, if we give that government that power, they're going to abuse it. I mean, just think back, I think it was in the 1800s, I think it was the Sioux tribe. The government came in and said, we'll protect you, give us your guns, and then they slaughtered 297 of them.
Yeah. I mean, you can't give the government that type of power. I mean, just through COVID, you see you can't give the government that type of power. They took that power. They abused that power.
Give them an inch, they'll take them out.
Right to this day, Djokovic couldn't come fulfill his tennis legacy because of COVID. Messed up policies. But you can cross the border illegally cross the border and get in America, but you can be the #1 tennis player in the world.
They're not illegally crossing the border. It's legally you're allowed to legally cross the border when you're fleeing from
asylum.
Yes.
But there's a way to do it. There's asylum checkpoint. So you can legally do it at the checkpoint and you can come claim asylum at a legal checkpoint. But you don't have to have identification. But it is illegal. There is a statute for I mean, just think about it. There is borders for a reason.
Are you to save your children, Are you going to go through legal standing to do so? Or are you going to do everything with that
I'm not saying what I would do, but I'm just saying there are laws.
Put yourself
But it's
in that
not
situation.
just those people, though.
Yeah,
you know how many IDs are dropped at the border?
No.
Because
Joe is
they're
right.
trafficking
You're right.
kids.
You're
I don't
right
wanna get
about
into more
that.
conspiracies.
You're right about that. I'm not
That's actually
saying
not
what
a
I would do.
conspiracy.
I'm just saying the legal part of it. The legal part, you said there's no illegal crossing. There are
I'm not saying there's not. I'm just saying.
You saying what would I do?
But I'm not going to turn away
thing.
people who are actually seeking asylum.
I'm not saying
for
that.
the fact that somebody else may be
I'm
coming
just
across.
saying, but there are legal terms. But see, that's the thing. You can break the law and you can claim asylum just because you want a better life, that doesn't mean you get to break the law. There's a lot of things. I want a better life, and I can illegally go rob a bank, and I can say, oh, but I wanted a better life. I'll still have to face the consequences for breaking that law.
But you're not breaking the law if you're seeking asylum.
No, yes, you are.
How?
Because you're not going in at the checkpoint. Listen. If you do it the right way, you're not breaking the law. If you go to the asylum checkpoint, you're not breaking the law. But if you do the Rio Grande or go through Phoenix, or if you cross any border, you're breaking the law. That's the bottom of it. Why have laws if the laws are meant to be broken?
And you also have to have if you talk about checks and balances, you got to have checks and balances at the border.
You have to.
Otherwise, like, look at this. Okay, so
It'd be out of control,
how many
which
people?
it is
How many
right now.
people were? So was it 8 people that caused all the damage on 9/11? They got on the planes. So just think about that. Let's say it's 8. I don't know the exact number either.
There was 3 planes. I imagine it was more than 8 people.
It was like 15 Saudis.
But either way,
there was 4
a
planes.
very small amount of people, less than 20 people, let's say, that caused all the damage in 9/11.
Outstayed their visas.
Okay, so let's just say there's less than 20 people right now that have crossed our border, of over the 2 million that have crossed our border in the last year and a half.
Meant to do us harm.
Meant to do us harm, and we just don't know it yet because we have no checks and balances. That is a serious topic.
They're seeking asylum.
But they're seeking asylum, right? So, like, you can't have it both ways. Like, we're either a law-abiding country or we're not.
Why have the law? Why have the law if there's no punishment to the law? There's no need. Just look at Canada. You can't even get into Canada with a drunk driver's
With a
ticket.
DUI, yeah.
You can't even get into Canada, and their checkpoints are serious. You can't drive to Canada. Those bounties are waiting. They're waiting on you. But
The Mounties, not the bounties.
A Mountie and a bounty. But no, I get it. I get it. People do want to come over here, but you have to do it the right way. That's all I'm saying. You have to do it the right way. And I get it. It's such a tough thing to even talk about, but you do have to follow the rules. It's unfair to people who do follow the rules. You know, what about the people, it's just crazy how you can, like I said, you can come over here illegally, but Djokovic, what would have happened to him if he would have just got on a plane and tried? They wouldn't have let him.
He did it in Australia.
No, kicked him out.
He showed up to Australia.
Yeah, and they kicked him out.
Yeah.
So, but bottom line is there is a point there, and we can probably talk about that on a different podcast because it seems like there's some meat on the bone there, and some stuff you need to look at on the ID thing. That's not a conspiracy. Like people dropping IDs.
Yeah, but the
get
empathy
kids
part of
across.
me is gonna always say, like, bro, if there's somebody coming over here who's seeking asylum due to the environment in which they're coming from, if we are a privileged country and we have the capacity to do so, by all means, come here. Like,
Where does it stop?
But do it the right way.
Where does it stop?
I mean, at that point, in that situation, if the same thing was happening here, I'm not doing it the right way. If I'm seeking to escape something for fear of my life or fear of my children's life, I'm going to do whatever the fuck.
But then, okay, but then you got to look at
dead ass. You are going to do the same thing for your daughters and the same thing for your daughters.
So I agree, but at the same point, then.
So how then can you say that they should do it the right way?
Well, because
you're going to do whatever you can to protect your family.
Because there's going to be people that will abuse that system, and then that's going to harm American citizens.
But okay, so there are going to be people but that's every system is going to be abused. Every system that's out there.
Do you think that's going to happen in Canada?
Intentions is going to be abused. You can't tell me that there's not other people that aren't going to Canada illegally versus people that are going legally. It's happening.
A lot of people.
They didn't have 2 million immigrants this year illegally.
They also aren't on the border of Mexico and other third world countries that are coming up from Central and South America.
It's not all on. It's not all on the immigrants either. It's a lot of business people and politicians who used and abused that for slave labor, for just different
child
employment.
trafficking.
Because There's a lot that goes on in America. Just say, I may want to go to France and find a better life in France. I can't do that. They won't let me. I can't sneak into France. They will deport me in a heartbeat. It would be hard for me to get over there. Try going to Dubai without a passport. They don't even let a lot of people into these other countries. You lose your passport, you are in a world of shit. You know, but you can just cross our borders. Why even have a border? You know, there's only so many resources. Like the black community, the ones who stand up and clap for this the most, I look at it. I look at my old community. And this is no knock against my Hispanic friends. My old community is 80% Hispanic, re-gentrified. South side of Madison, right through the south side of Madison. The basketball courts I used to play on, people are kicking soccer balls up there. And I'm not mad at them. I'm glad they used the park. I don't even see any black people on the south side anymore. Where are we being pushed to? The job labor. Look at some of the schools. My daughter went to Wright Middle School. Mm-hmm. It's 80% Hispanic. And those kids are thriving. It's the black kids who aren't going to class. It's the black kids who are fighting. Because that nuclear household within the Hispanic households, they have a father, a mother, they have discipline, they teach them work ethic at an early age, which the black community used to be prevalent with work ethic. They'd work as porters on the train. That was been all stripped. They've been taught to idolize the drug dealer and the pimps and the pushers. Now, and the gold chains, that's what we idolize. We used to idolize the guy who came home who was the mailman and stuff like that. We've been stripped of that. And I can tell you, it's easy to cut the head and the body will fall. And I'm going to get a little off subject, but look at the Negro League. You had the best talent. You had 20,000 black people going to watch a game, getting along. You had people selling refreshments. This was a great thing for the black community. All you have to do is get the guy that we celebrate, Jackie Robinson, make this guy the hero. But if you really look at it, he was the zero because he's the one who wanted to cross over to a slower baseball league. Now you got Sassel Page who want to cross over. That wasn't the thing that the players crossed over. Look what happened to the person who owned that stadium. That's gone. You can't ride in our cabs. We had a black cab company. That's gone. The guy who made the uniforms, that's gone. All of those ushers who worked there, that's gone. We can't stay at our hotels. That's gone. All of that dies for one guy that we idolize who just wanted to cross over, you know. So you have to be careful with who you make heroes. Real heroes, it's not about their wealth. It's what you do with your heart. It's what you do for humankind. The guys who was against the Iraq war, and it was some Democrats. Dennis Kucinich, maybe was it Russ Feingold? A couple of these guys put their whole political career on the line. Those are idols to me. When it's more, hell with this political job. I'm trying to save America, and we need to be careful right now because World War III is knocking at our door, you know, and let's get back to
in a lot
gun
of
rights.
ways. Hey, some real good shit there.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the heart. Mm-hmm. And that's what we talk about a lot on this show with leadership and how I interview people is to teach people about the heart. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's what it, by the way, that is America, is the heart. Not skin color, not religion, it's all of that, but it's the heart. It's the
moral
person.
ethics, though.
It's the moral ethics.
You have to stand for something, and we get so fooled by, you know, that's why Donald Trump is so misunderstood. It's the guy with the beautiful face like Obama who's so articulate, who can go bring back slavery in Libya for wanting them not to have their own money printed up and back in there. Libya had the most gold in the world. But to make a long story short, a lot of Catholic priests who were just so gentle and nice, who were molesting the boys. And then you see the grumpy janitor that no one liked, but he was the one who saved your child. You know, that moral ethic. It's the ones who smile in your face and you just love them. That be the worst ones. I've seen so many people lose out millions of dollars to their accountant or their priest or stuff like that because they talk the talk but didn't walk the walk. So I don't judge people how moody you are. It's what you do. It's your actions. It's your actions.
Yeah. And here's a point, too, I want to make, because we talked a lot about how Black America has been, for lack of better words, shit on by some of these laws. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to talk to my upper middle class white people right now. You cannot put a sign in your yard. You cannot vote Democrat and abdicate your responsibility as American to think you're for Black America or for any America.
They don't know what it's like.
Well, hold on. They don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like. Mm-hmm. But bottom line is, I give opportunities in jobs in this right here. I donate my time to Boys and Girls Club. I donate my time to other charities. I help donate money to build a library at one of the most underprivileged schools in Madison. That's doing something. Putting a fucking BLM sign in your yard or voting Democrat does not do anything.
But you do
that
know
is not
what it's
moving
like.
the needle.
You know what it's like, because it's a difference with you, Josh, because a lot of my white liberal friends, they live in such a bubble. They've never played on an all-black football team. They've never went to a black barber. They've never, like, if I was to ask you, Josh, you can call a bunch of black people right now. You really do have black friends. I'm like that token. A couple of my white friends could say, I know one black guy, but that just having a BLM sign in your yard and just saying, I'm just going to ride with a law because it sounds good. You got to look at, does this law help this community out? And not only just the black community, does this help out mankind?
But that's not just for that topic. That's the topic of apathy. I brought that up last
Correct.
week. Right? That's apathy for
It's
anything.
all
Like,
right.
support the veterans. Okay, what are you doing for veterans?
Right.
Yeah.
Right? You know, like, that same topic goes along with just about everything, right? Like, just because you say you support a cause without action, there's nothing.
But there's a lot of people.
Right?
So you
At that
donating
point,
your
it's a
time to
bumper
Boys and
sticker.
Girls Club, like exactly the bumper sticker in Madison. There's actually a Facebook group in Madison. I don't know if you've seen this, but Madison, Wisconsin, saving the world, one bumper sticker at a time. It's actually
There
a
are a lot of bumper
Facebook group,
stickers.
which is kind of funny, right? But at the same point, it's not doing anything. You yelling at your friends because they're conservative or because they support Trump, like my man Emmanuel here, like that doesn't do anything. Identity politics does not do anything. Us coming together and uniting as the United States of America, not the divided states of America, is what's going to do something. So stop just thinking because you put a sign in your yard or because you put a black square on your Facebook that you're a good person. You're not. Do something. Be a good person in life.
On another note, I don't just support Trump. I support some of his policies. I don't support, there's a lot of policies I don't like. I support, beyond Trump, I support anyone with solid policies. I'll support anybody. I'm colorblind. I'm politically blind. I support anyone who's against war. I hate war. Senseless wars. I don't care who you are. Joe Biden, I applaud him for getting out of Afghanistan. The way he did it may have been wrong, but we should not be locked down in Afghanistan. I applaud I hate war. I hate selling our country out, and the Democrats and the Republicans did that.
Yep.
All of these middle class jobs were shipped out of greed, and it's a lot of politicians need to answer for a lot of bad.
And how
policies.
many family members, how many friends have we lost in senseless wars?
Oh,
Right. So anyhow, we got off topic. We're over an hour. We probably got our next topic with immigration since
There
we
we
got
go.
into some of that.
That's a touchy one, man.
It is, but all
Yeah.
these are touchy, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the point of this conversation, y'all. Is we're gonna have contentious conversations, and we're gonna be all over the map because all three of us are passionate, and we all three love our country. Not all parts of it. Right? There's all sorts of messed up parts of it, from our government to some of our policies to some of the people. But a lost art is in these contentious conversations and being able to come together on some things. And I don't know if we did that or not tonight. I think we did a little bit.
I think we talked a lot more about other things than the Second Amendment. But
it was a gumbo.
Well, you know,
but it's good though. It's good.
But the thing is, it ties into a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right? Like and that's how all
there's
these policies are.
intersectionality in all of it, right? I mean, I think if you're ever on a topic of discussion regarding anything that has to do with political spectrum or realm, it's going to probably bleed into other topics and other things that become contentious conversations as well.
Yeah.
So,
And that's okay, right? For y'all to having a conversation. So get with your neighbors, right? If shit really went down, if there was a tragedy in our community right now, we're going to drop it. Just like we came together after 9/11, didn't matter race, creed, anything. Like we were there, right? And there shouldn't have to be a tragedy for us to come together. That's the biggest thing. Like we are all humans fighting a human plight, and life is difficult at all different levels, and it's different for everyone what their difficulties are, but life as a whole is difficult. So that's what I'd just like to say is, like, we need to unite because the media and government are trying to keep us divided. Maybe some of us believe that to a more degree than others, like me.
I think when people mess up, it's not about me, man. This world is big. It's about we and us. I want to respect everybody's opinion. I just want everyone to make the right opinion. Like when it comes to war, you got some people who love war. You know, who people the military industrial complex, all of that money, they're not for us. That's that me mentality.
Yeah,
it's about us. And a lot of my liberal friends need to learn it's not just about you. When you live in this glass house and certain things don't bother you, and by you donating or putting a sign in your window or feeling sorry for a situation that you know nothing about and you're adding fuel to the flame, that's not helping out. Like, it's just so much with some of these laws. I live it. I see it. I have nephews. I have a nephew that's facing a murder charge in St. Louis right now who happens to be a cross-gender, a young man with breasts, and he just kills someone. I don't know the situation of that yet right now, but by a lot of people just looking from the outside in, you're not helping that situation, making some of these laws. Like, he had a gun charge. They weren't hard enough, and that may have cost him by being so lenient on him. First thing he did was got another gun, and I have to listen to Joe. Why did he have to have a gun? He's a transsexual young man in the heart of St. Louis. Transgender, and he may need.
Does he identify as or do they identify as a woman?
His name's Kyrie. I don't want to give out too, but her name's Kamaya now. Her name's Kamaya.
Respectful. I'm just saying. Yeah, it's your niece.
I don't know if my niece needed that because it's a cold world out there. I don't know if she needed that. I don't know if it was self-defense. I haven't got into her case yet, but she may have needed that gun for protection. So, like you say, before you pass judgment, you have to look at the big picture.
The most exploited American is the black transgendered female.
So that's why
murdered.
Yeah, that's exploited. Why I don't know if she was just surviving and had to do what she had to do. So. Yeah, it's just a tough world, and you have to look at the whole puzzle before you try to just grab one piece and solve it.
And also, interesting fact is the fastest growing gun purchase population is black females. Legally, yes. I listened to a guy named Mal who started the BGM movement, Black Guns Matter, who's a real interesting follow. I would suggest people follow him and what he's done because he's gone and he made it a mission to go into the 13 most violent cities and start teaching responsible gun ownership. And he talked about black females being the highest percentage growth because they're trying to protect themselves. So that the transgender black females could be in that list as well. So last word from you, Joe. We'll bring it back to Second Amendment. We'll give each other last word.
I mean, I truly believe in additional gun control. I do. I mean, I didn't really take it from Yoke's perspective as there should be harsher gun. I'd have to do more research on that myself. But I mean, that's you're speaking from a first person perspective, which makes me think that I probably need to dive into that a bit more and understand that more. I do believe in capacity limitations. I think we need to be more diligent about who's able to purchase a gun and why they're able to purchase a gun. Waiting times is a huge thing that I would advocate for as well. I don't think that, I mean, you bring up a point about, wanting to protect your family, but I think there's other avenues for that. But going and purchasing a gun and being able to have a gun, like my experiences was in an hour, maybe isn't the best way. Because I know I can have a temper at times. Now, maybe I'm not going to have a temper and go buy a gun. I'm not, actually. But there's no reason to
Depends on how bad I piss you off.
Nah. We got too many family ties. I just think that there's some good intentions in ensuring that people aren't purchasing guns for the wrong reasons and that people aren't getting guns in their hands in a time of high emotional stress.
I will disagree with the capacity thing because if you're doing it legally and you're practicing responsible gun ownership, meaning that it's not getting to another family member, it's not getting to someone else that you don't even know, anything that general, like it doesn't matter. Like there's a law against murder, there's a law against assault, there's a law, like none of these laws are solving some of the problem. We got to get to the root cause of some of these issues, which could be mental health, which could be anger, which could be an oppression against certain people that cause them to get angry or lash out or whatever it might be. But bottom line, getting back to core values as human beings and respecting each other and loving each other. The gun, my gun has never shot anyone, right? So like, it's never like, and no gun is going to just jump off the table and shoot anyone. It's always a human being that's going to pull that trigger and shoot someone.
Yeah.
Right. The classic example is like, a spoon has never made anyone fat, right? Like, it's kind of a classic example. So bottom line is, I want a tank. I want a Black Hawk helicopter. I say that in jest, but it would be fun.
But you need a license for that helicopter. You need checks and balances for that helicopter.
I do, but again, I don't want it from the government. If we have to go back to a for the people, by the people militia, state-run militia, that can't be bought and paid for by politicians or big corp or any of that, like, I can get behind that. But the bottom line is, I just don't trust our government, and I think that tyranny is on our doorstep. World War III could be on our doorstep, and I want to protect my family.
I would just like to say, I don't think there's a law for craziness, and I feel background checks could do a little bit more with background checks. I think they need to be harsher on. Now, people make mistakes. Your first offense, I could see being a little lenient. Someone have made a mistake, but 3, 4, and 5, and I think there should be more responsibility as far as owning a gun. You need more responsibility. Like, what was it? Rudolph guy. His mom had the AK. When you know someone's like really, really disturbed in the mind, and you give them access to a gun, I think you're just as just as responsible as that person. His mom should have never bought him a gun for his birthday. Believe me, if I had a relative I knew that shouldn't have a gun, I would call him out. I would raise the red flags right away. And a lot of people turn a blind eye to that. I don't think that's fine. I don't think that's cool at all. But it's just such a slippery slope, man. It's just hard to start judging people who can have a gun. And like you say, it's not the gun, it's the person.
It's the person.
And that's
always
hard. Yeah.
Always. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning into Spartan Leadership today. We want you to share these episodes where we're having contentious conversations. These aren't comfortable. By the way, these aren't comfortable conversations for us by any means, because we're challenging our own beliefs. We're challenging our friends' beliefs sitting next to us. So these were meant to be shared. Hopefully you guys learn. Hopefully you understand our positions. But hopefully it pisses you off a little bit in some way, shape, or form. One of us does, because that means we're doing our job of bringing 3 different points of views and not being too slanted in our conversations. But bottom line is, this is what America is about, is coming together on contentious conversations, trying to meet in the middle and see each other eye to eye in a respectful manner with love and respect. So until next time, share this episode, and remember, good and great are the enemies of possible.